Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. I thought I would start doing some dioramas again, and you needing dioramas, we usually have trees in our dioramas, so I thought I would show you guys how to take some simple stuff like some craft wire, some Vallejo diorama effects, and make some really cool trees to use in your 35th scale, or actually any scale diorama, just depending on the size of the tree you make. They're real simple to do, they only take a short time, and they're actually pretty inexpensive, so let's get started on it. Okay, to start making our tree, we're going to start off using, basically this is like floral wire that you can get like at like a Michael's or any place that sells fake flowers. And it's a very soft, flexible wire, very easy to bend. What I've done is I've taken a little handful of strips here of it and just taken a little bit of the wire and wrapped it really tight all around here to kind of give it a good base. Now before we do anything else, we're going to make some slight amount of roots on this, and we're going to put a few of them on both sides of it here, and that's really easy to make. Just taking a couple of your extra strands, kind of loop it together, just kind of twist it around, and then just kind of make a little loop like this, twist this into place, and then kind of bend it like that. And we can cut these and things as we go later on, but we want our base to be a little bit wider at the, the trunk of the tree should be a little bit fatter. And so after we've got a few of these made, we can just put these on all the different sides, and then just taking some of our other wire, another piece of wire, start it and just start wrapping these pieces all the way up, just to keep it nice and tight. Now these will move a little bit, but then you can always go back and just adjust them to any direction you want them to go in. And we'll get all this nice and tight wrapped up. Once that gets on there, then we can go ahead and start pulling them around to the different areas. Now, I normally build in 35th scale. That's my common scale. So I happen to have a scale ruler that has 35th scale. So measuring this out, I want to probably keep it like a 20 foot to 22 foot tree, which is right about here. So once we get into this position right here, we can start taking our branches, little clumps of them. I want this particular branch to be kind of a fat one that kind of grew away from the side of the tree. And you basically just start grabbing chunks like that. Now another one. Take that one out of the way there. That one was kind of twisted already. And same thing with this. Start grabbing pieces of it. And you can start bending it out and just start to form the way you want the tree to start to look. Now I twisted a few of these already for another project actually, so normally they'd be pretty straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start twisting all of these up, and I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like. And as you can see here, I've gone ahead and I've twisted up tightly many of the branches and got it to a general shape that I'm pretty happy with. Now what I'm going to use for the bark is, you can use actually any color, but I'm going to use this Vallejo Earth texture of the acrylic stuff. It's got a nice consistency on it, and just using some kind of stick, we're going to start filling in all of the wire effect on it. And this stuff has got a little bit of flexibility to it too, so that if you bend the branches or anything, you won't always snap this off. Now this is going to take a little bit of time and probably more than one coat, but we'll start filling in the tree here. Now this first coat will be a little rough, and that's fine on it, but the second coat is when we'll be able to smooth it out a little bit more. And I'm just using a piece of leftover resin actually to get to apply the product. After you get a nice coat on this and you let the stuff set up for a few minutes, probably about a total of 20, you can start using the side of the stick to start to smooth the bark out so it's not such a rough texture as you see right here. So here you see our completed tree with the diorama effects. We left it smooth in some areas and rough in others, just to kind of give it a general texture of the way a tree would be. You might also notice that I didn't put much, if any, of the diorama effects gel on top of like the very tips of the branches, and that's because most of it is going to get covered up with the small foliage and some of the smaller branches, which I'll show you in the next step. But before we do any of that, you'll see that I'm starting to put a base coat of a darker brown. Now this could have been avoided. They make a brown color of the gel already. Fortunately I was out of it. I had used most of it up in another video. I'm doing a diorama, so I just thought I would use this one to show you how you can paint it. So any color will really work for this. And the other nice part about it is because it does have a flexibility to it, like I was saying earlier. So if you don't like the way a branch is sitting, you can actually adjust it and still move it, and it doesn't pop off. Now I still might go back after I put the brown on and trim up any of the branches if I think they're too thick in some areas. But looking at trees, it's kind of a nice gnarled effect to it that I kind of like. So I'm going to finish up painting the rest of this, and we'll come back and start with the next step. Okay, I thought I'd give you kind of an extreme close-up view of the way the bark looks. Now what I'm just using some dark gray paint on the tip of this brush that I'm just going to dry brush lightly to kind of get that gray tone that most trees have. They don't usually have just a brown look to it, so we'll just start lightly because we still want some of the brown tones underneath to show through. And we'll just go lightly back and forth. Just getting it to do some of the highlights and show some more depth in the tree that we're building. Okay, once the dark gray has dried, we're going to use some light gray, and for this purposes I'm just going to use a little XF19 sky gray, and doing the exact same thing but a little lighter touch this time. This lighter gray is just going to make all the highlights pop even more. You want to have a real subtle touch, but just to make all the little detail that you spent all the time working on really pop out. And you just want to work on that work and get it to a point that you like it at. And lastly, what I've done just for this piece, I've taken the gray that we were using, the lightly dry brush, and I added a little bit of a green color. And this was NATO green, but I've mixed a little black green with it for another project. And just kind of blend it together. And then we just started lightly tapping onto it. And that leaves little highlights that kind of resemble like moss and other little things growing. But it doesn't really have too much of a green. And there again, lightly, and that's completely up to your preference on how you want it to end up looking. But I'm kind of liking the way that this is starting to look on the trunk down here, with a little bit of greenish gray growing onto it. So I'll keep blending it and come back and show you what it looks like. So here we go. Here is the point I think I'm going to stop on this one. I'm really liking the way the texture with a little bit of green gray, kind of looking like a little bit of a moss or any other type of growth on the tree looks. Also keep in mind too, we left these pretty much intact right here for a couple reasons. A, it's a great standing point, you know, for when working on the tree. It makes it stand up. But also when we go ahead and do the diorama base, we will be able to put our scenery around it, and it's going to lock the tree onto the diorama base, making a much more sturdy diorama. Now at this point you could just leave the tree just as is, as if it's a dead tree, into a diorama. And what I'm doing right now is I'm using some Woodland Scenics polyfiber. And this is just kind of like a mesh stuff. And this is going to represent our little small branches. It's also something that is going to be able to connect all of our leaves onto. So just stretching it, you don't want to make it too thick. You want to give it more of a shape of a canopy. You don't want just something like a big round ball of leaves and stuff. You want to see openings that where the tree lets light in down below. So I'm going to kind of like take this stuff, and it comes in multiple colors. I just happen to have green left over from a project I did a long time ago. I'm going to continue to sculpt this, and we'll come back and start working on the leaves. Next, what I'm doing is I'm taking some clump foliage. We're just tearing it up into small pieces as we possibly can, and just get it down to real small stuff till you start to get a look like this. And this is going to be the base of some of the chunks of foliage that's going to get put on top of the tree. Now we've just sprayed the tree with a mixture of white glue and water. And then we're going to try to just sprinkle this liberally across. And it's mostly water, so it's going to dry completely clear, but it will help stick a lot of these trees' leaves to. Now I had to do a little bit of the last couple of steps outside just because of how messy it is. But this will kind of give you a general idea, and I'll kind of go over what I did with it. After we sprinkled the clump foliage into place, I went over it and used some different colors of fine turf, which a light green and then a medium green, and then kind of sprinkled that over, and then just sprayed women's hairspray over the entire thing to kind of make it all stick together. Now that it's starting to dry off, what we're going to do now is just taking a pair of scissors and just going in between some of the clumps, any of these branches, you know, of the polyfiber that are sticking out that just look a little weird. So what I'll do is, and that way you get kind of like clumps on the trees. Now there will be a little bit of loose leaf that sticks to the trunk just from using the hairspray and stuff, but that's easily wiped off with like a soft brush before it completely sets up. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do some cleanup on the tree, cutting off all those little excess branches and stuff, kind of getting it into the nice shape that we want. And I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So here we are. Here is our completed tree. We did the little bit of trimming on it and wiped off some of the excess little leaves that had accumulated. And keep in mind too, this is just one variation that you can make of the tree. I'm just giving you the basics on this. If you want to make a tree with much more foliage on it or much less, it's all up to you. What colors you use, all of that kind of stuff. I just chose one. I kind of wanted an open area, so if I put a tank underneath it, it'll look kind of cool, so you can still see in and see all the tank from all the different angles. So now that we have a tree, you know, we have to make a diorama. So look forward to a video very soon showing this being used in a diorama. So the time, it probably took, probably about a day and a half of actual construction time to build this. And that's mostly letting the stuff dry overnight, the Vallejo product underneath there. Putting on all the leaves and all that other stuff is actually very, very quick, and the entire tree probably cost less than $5 to make something like this, and because that Vallejo product has enough in it to make probably about 4 or 5 trees of this size, and if you're using shorter trees, even more than that. And then all of the woodland scenic stuff is all pretty inexpensive as well, and once you buy a little bit of it, you've got enough to do quite a few trees. So I want to thank you guys as always for watching. And please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming. And stay tuned right after I put a list up of all the items that I used to make this tree.